We've got a fascinating story with these two ladies who joined us now in the studio. It's shocking and at the same time fascinating because they escaped one of the world's most shocking cults.
Yeah, this is Hope, Bastine and Verity Carter. They suffered in silence as they were subjected to shocking abuse while growing up in the notorious Children of God cult. But after managing to escape the institutions, both Verity and Hope are now speaking out about their separate traumatic experiences in a new 5-part documentary. And as you can see, they're
it's
here
called
now.
Children of the Cult. It's on Discovery Plus, and it's gonna just tell people, guys, this whole story, and how shocked are people going to be by what they hear?
I think people are going to, they're going to be surprised because it's very difficult for people to understand that there are people growing up very separate from mainstream society. And, you know, in mainstream society, children go to school, we're aware of the police, we know the structure and the infrastructure of society. So when somebody comes into your life that had nothing to do with that, it's a surreal experience.
I think as well, Verity, a lot of people, like Eamon mentioned earlier, will say, oh, was that in America? Was that one of those cults in America? Tell us about your experience.
That's usually the reaction I get from anyone when I tell them my experiences or even just a part of it is, you mean that happens outside of 80s America? It's very much a perception that this doesn't exist in today's world. And what I find people find even more shocking is that sometimes it happened on their doorstep. It wasn't always in out-of-the-way places. We were there in plain sight for some parts.
Yeah. We can tell by your accent you're Scottish. So how were you brought into this cult? Were you born into the cult?
I was born into the cult. I was born in Scotland. I was moved around across the UK and Ireland quite regularly. Truth be told, I don't know a lot of the addresses I grew up in. That's one of the barriers we've had in bringing cases to court, is the locations were kept secret. The names of the individuals who crossed our paths were usually false.
And were your parents part of the cult, and then therefore you were born into it?
Both of my parents are part of the cult, and me and my siblings were all born into it.
But Hope, what was the cult? What Children of God went under the cloak of being what?
They called themselves a fundamentalist Christian group, but there was a novel belief, which was the law of love, which under David Berg's directive meant anything could be done if done in love. And that did mean that it exposed us to
physical abuse.
Yes, inappropriate amount of abuse.
Yeah. And do you believe the people who were practicing this, the people at the top, believed in this, or was this a guise for sexual malpractice?
Well, I think when I talk to my parents and try to understand their psychology, it's like the gentle drip method. Berg would every year come out with a new...
David Berg.
Yeah. Sorry, David Berg. He would come out with like a new revolutionary prophecy or a radical belief, and it would be simultaneously exciting. Oh wow, we're doing something different. But each year it would get more and more extreme. So. And then it's under this this sort of cloak of entrapment. You know, we lived in communes. My mother had to relinquish her passport to the leaders. You had to forsake all and give all your goods to the cult, so she had no other assets. They filtered her inheritance from her.
Yeah, guys, could I ask you both, Verity? I want to ask you both, but Verity, first of all with you, now in your 40s, how damaged have you been by this? You have to live with the legacy of this, or the repercussions with this.
It's caused me a lot of damage. There was a period of my life where I went off the rails, and there was a significant level of self-medication, which has left me with some physical after effects. Mentally, I still have long-term effects. I have insomnia, I have flashbacks, I do receive help and counselling, but these are things I've learned to manage rather than to cure. It's day-to-day life. There's still things that occur each day that may or may not trigger me or may set something off, and there's social difficulties with big gaps in my cultural knowledge. However, I have moved on to my life. I am able to manage those symptoms a lot better than I did. I'm now raising my family and volunteering and have as probably close to normal as a life as I can expect at this stage.
Well, you say close to normal, you know, what is normal, but, you know, Hope, when you come out of a cult, you've known nothing else, both of you born into it. I mean, we're talking, you know, sexual abuse, but also it was like an army. You had to work, children were used almost like slave labour, it sounds to me, reading about it. When you both got out, then what did you make of the world? What did the world make of you? How did you adjust?
I think a lot of experimentation at first, and because it was freedom, when I left, the world was my oyster. I was just excited and happy to be engaging and learning as much as I could. I was hungry for knowledge, and I had insomnia too. I would spend the night hours catching up on TV, catching up on pop culture, reading in the library, just talking and learning and listening to everybody. And I enrolled in college, and I just, you know, I tried to learn as much as I could.
All the things you'd missed out on.
Yeah.
Of course, cults, that's a bad word. We don't use cults anymore, right? The organisation exists.
Yeah.
Children of God are now known as Family International.
Yeah.
Now, they have a statement, you know, setting out their side of all of this. And they say, the Family International has extended open apologies to anyone who was or might have been hurt or harmed in any way during their time residing in family communities, which are likewise extended to Verity and Hope. Although the Family International has apologised for any hurt, real or perceived, that any member or former member may have experienced, we do not give credence to tales of institutionalised abuse. Verity, what do you make of that?
I don't see how they can claim it wasn't institutionalised when they wrote manuals on how to abuse children physically and sexually and otherwise as instructions for parents and child raising. It was institutionalised, whatever they say.
And when you talk about sexual abuse against children, how old, how young?
My earliest memories go back to 4 years old for my first incident of sexual abuse that I remember. I don't have many memories before that. The manuals instructed on the abuse of children as young as 2 in some cases. It was severe, and it was sent out to the communes, not only encouraged, but not only condoned, but actually encouraged as a way to raise their children in God's love.
So they were actively told, this is a good way to raise children.
But it wasn't just the physical and the sexual abuse. That's sort of the very obvious side. There's also the psychological abuse, the emotional abuse, what we now call coercive control.
Do you accept Family International's apology?
No, I find it quite a narcissistic apology. I've never received a personal apology, and you know, in order to meet the criteria for an apology, you need to make behaviour change, you need to make amends, you need to show genuine contrition, and I've not experienced any of that from them.
But you did, Hope, manage to bring a case against one of the cult members, Derek Lincoln, he abused you for 12 years.
Yes.
And he was jailed last year for 11 and a half years. Did that give you any
closure,
I suppose?
Enormously. It was one of the best days of my life, mostly because, you know, judging by their apology, we're gaslit. No, you didn't experience abuse. That was just our way of life. And it doesn't help with the healing process. But when the governments say, we acknowledge this, we recognize this is wrong, and, you know, this person is going to pay the price, it's validation, and it goes a long way to healing.
At one stage, Children of God had 10,000 full-time members. There were 130 communities around the world. We were talking about Scotland, in Renfrewshire, in Lanarkshire, in Ayrshire, in Edinburgh. They were there as well, just again to just get home that this cult existed here. We then will see the documentary on Discovery Plus. What do you think people will take away from watching that programme, Verity?
I'm hoping that people will take away, like Hope said, awareness that these things do still go on. If someone comes to you with an extreme story, it may actually be true. Hopefully professionals can deal with these cases better, because there's been a lack of that, at least in my experience. What I'm also hoping is that other survivors of abuse, not just from our cult, but from any form of abuse, will maybe find the courage to find their voice, make their statements. If enough of us speak, we are more likely to get more cases in court. There are more abusers out there, and I'd like to see more justice occur.
And do you know, in your experience, has anybody else come forward since the two of you have?
Since my story came out, so many people have written into me and said me too, including people that have suffered at the hands of Derek Lincoln. There is, in fact, an open case with the Police Scotland, who are happy to work with other agencies across the world. So they have an open case. So if there's
it's
any survivors,
ongoing.
yeah.
There's so much to your stories that we haven't been able to talk about, and you know how you eventually left the cult as well, which is fascinating. But the documentary, I think we'll all watch it. Hopefully, a lot of people will learn from it. Children of the Cult, now available on Discovery Plus. Hope, Verity, thank you both very much indeed for giving us an insight. Thank you very much.